With New Year's resolutions, many of us will make a vow to eat healthier, and that's a good thing. But what about our beloved pets and their nutrition? Greetings, Naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black here, and I'm on a mission to provide better nutrition for cats and dogs because truthfully, all pet food is dead food, which is why we created Rough Greens and Meow Greens in the first place. We bring their food back to life with live vitamins, minerals, probiotics, enzymes, omega oils, antioxidants, and so much more. All in a tasty formula that your dog and cat will love. You can improve your pet's coat, digestion, energy, and have less vet bills. Let 2025 bring a new year and a new pet. Get a Jumpstart trial bag, normally $20. Get a 100% discount with promo code BESTFRIEND. You just cover the shipping. Go to roughgreens.com, use promo code BESTFRIEND. Bring your pet's food back to life with Rough Greens. So good, your pet will ask for it by name.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting. If you just contact me through my email address, oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Don't forget our Patreon. I've been putting up stuff in Patreon exclusive to just Patreon. Did a little solo show about Melrose Hole from the Art Bell show. That's brand new. I just did that. And I put up a little report on this prison break in Nevada that is so... The story just does not add up whatsoever. It's the craziest story I've ever heard. Where the guy's missing from prison for 4 days, 5 days. They don't even notice him gone. Then supposedly he walks 37 miles down to a bus stop. You're like, I tell you, pretty great stuff in there. So a lot of exclusive stuff going in there too. I'm going to be putting up a show about George Harrison, too, a hoax I'm aware of with George Harrison claiming that he believes that Paul was dead. We have returning with us today. As a matter of fact, if you go to our Spreaker channel, Spreaker.com, I do a live show there Friday night. There's a chat room. You get an email notification when I put up new content. And if you go there and you look up William Dorsch, D-O-R-S-C-H, I've done 2 shows with him previously about John Wayne Gacy. I think he's the best guest out there on John Wayne Gacy. He's a private investigator. He visited the Gacy home before Gacy was arrested. Had dinner there. His wife worked with Gacy in a business transaction. And then he worked as a private investigator in the Gacy case. Has exclusive information you're not going to hear anywhere else. He's just written a book called Omnipotent. Don't ask, don't tell. But I encourage you to go back and listen to those 2 previous shows and also pick up this book here, Omnipotent, Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Mr. William Dorsch, are you there?
Yes, sir. Hello, Ed.
Hey, man, thank you so much for coming back. Before we get into the new book, Omnipotent, Don't Ask, Don't Tell the audience about yourself. Remind them who William Dorsch is.
Well, I'm a long-time retired from the Chicago Police Department. I came out of the police department in 1970, and I retired as a homicide detective in 1994. And thought I was going to live a life of quiet, and got bored very quickly and became a licensed private investigator, working both in Wisconsin and Illinois, mostly on homicide cases.
Now, we've had John previously talking about John Wayne Gacy, but this new book, Omnipotent, Don't Ask, Don't Tell, it doesn't cover just John Wayne Gacy, right? Why don't you give us a brief overview on what we're going to find in this book about John Wayne Gacy, and then we'll talk about the rest of the book.
Well, okay. I broke the book down into 4 different sections, okay? The first one I titled Kill the Messenger. Having been a Chicago police homicide detective with a good career and years of experience, I assumed that I had a good relationship with my peers and with my bosses, okay? As a police officer, you acquire information more than a normal citizen because you work within the law, the justice system. And I, like you mentioned, I had contact with Gacy, having dinner at his house, but one time. I only met him there one time at that house, the home that later was going to be the scene of so many recovered victims buried under his house. Because I knew Gacy, I also knew that he worked at an apartment building near my home. And one evening, this is years before his arrest, I'm coming home from work about 3 in the morning, and I saw him with the shovel walking out from between two parked cars. And when I stopped and asked him what he was doing there, because I knew he didn't live there but worked there, he sort of laughed and said, well, Bill, not enough hours in the day. You have to get it done when you can. So, not suspecting nothing, I went home and thought nothing more of it until 1978 when he gets arrested and is accused after police recovered over 20 bodies buried under his house and more on his property. And, well, you know, you do the right thing. You do what you hope citizens would do. You turn the information over that I had, which is only suspicion about the property, to the police. And you expect, especially because you were one of them, that you worked homicide cases, that they would take your information seriously and that they would go and interview people and the owner of the apartment building where I had encountered him that night with the shovel, only to find out that many years later they never did anything. And when I say they never did anything, I gave the information to the Cook County Sheriff's Department because they were in charge of the investigation after Desplaines made the arrest. Okay, so they had the ongoing case, and like any citizen, you think of a man who killed 33 bodies, that no stone is going to be left unturned. You expect that law enforcement is going to conduct an honest and thorough investigation. That's the least they can do for the families of these missing kids, or some identified and still not identified even today. But I learned later that that wasn't done. Okay? You can call it malfeasance, which would be criminal, or you could call it inattention to duty. But as an experienced detective, I saw that they didn't follow any of the steps. What they did, Ed, was they actually ended their investigation with the arrest of Gacy. That should have been the beginning of the investigation.
Let me ask you a question, Bill Dorsch, because normally, you know, people make a report to the police and they think, oh boy, they're going to go work on this thing for me, you know. I made a police report. But, you know, the cop who takes a report, he doesn't want to, you know, he wants the day to be over, you know what I mean? He doesn't want to go out and look for new work. But on a case like this, people go out of their way to attach their name to a case like Gacy. They'll make an appearance when they're not even needed to get on a TV camera or, you know, attach their name to some report or something. They can use it later on in their career. Why do you think they didn't follow up on your information?
Well, I'll take you through many years now. This Gacy's arrested December 21st, 78. And I retired in 94. He was executed in, 1994, just a few months before I retired. And all that time, and even into my retirement, all I ever had and all I could ever pass on to law enforcement was a suspicion about John Gacy, now a known murderer, encountering him with a shovel on this evening and pointing out the location. That's all I had was suspicion. Mm-hmm. You needed something more. But when I engaged with the Better Government Association on another homicide case, I informed them about my suspicion of Gacy at this location. And we decided to try some new technology, which is a ground-penetrating radar. And once we acquired that information and under the expertise of the man who ran the scan, it was believed that there were anomalies that, as he put it in his letter, should have sent a trained detective running to a hardware store for a shovel. Mm. Now, they didn't do any investigation work, okay? What the Cook County Sheriff's did was basically, once a body was identified, they contacted the family and said, we identified your child, come and get him. And they did nothing else. And as a detective, once the focus is identifying the body, and then the important thing to do is to try to find out who saw that person last and put pieces together. But they weren't interested in any of that. They did none of that. Okay? So with the results of the scan and taking it to the police department, first I took it to the Chicago Police Department because the location that I was talking about was in Chicago. And don't forget, Chicago, most of the victims, they were not found buried. None of the victims were found buried in Chicago. They were found within a little area called Norwood Park Township that was surrounded by the city of Chicago. So the city had, they didn't have to account for those bodies being buried there. They were lucky. But those kids disappeared from Chicago. Okay? But Chicago did nothing. The only ones that did anything was this Plains Police Department who surveilled Gacy and led to his arrest. Okay? But you want to know why? Here's what happened. After the 1998, after I gave the information to the Chicago police, and they were sort of backed into a corner because of the BGA, they weren't worried about Bill Dorsch, retired detective. They could dismiss me and the information, but they could not dismiss the Better Government Association. So they had to play ball with us. What they did, and I knew before they ever did the search, they faked a search of the property on Miami Avenue and then declared there's nothing here. Okay? Well, then I had to tuck my tail in, and there was nowhere I can go. I had only turned over the information. There was nothing more I can do. But years later, let's see, I want to make sure I get this in order for you. I encountered a Mrs. Marino, who had she contacted me, and she contacted me in 2011. So this is 98 was the search, 2011 she's contacting me, and in between, all I'm thinking about is, okay, you got suspicion but no other proof, but you got the radar scan. They should have searched, but they didn't. But when Mrs. Marino telling me a story about her son Michael's disappearance when he was only 14, the story she told me was so unbelievable that it should get every person who hears that story angry. Because what she went through, no person, no mother, no parent should have ever been put through that by the City of Chicago Police Department. And it was what happened to her that got me interested in, I said to myself, if they're going to do this to this poor woman, what else are they hiding? Okay? So I'm not really, how can I say this? I mean, being a Chicago police officer for so many years, there were instances in my life where I encountered situations where things that should have happened didn't happen. And usually it was because somebody involved was connected to somebody with connection. Okay? I can give you the first instance. It happened to me when I was at...
But before we get to that, I want to stay on Gacy for one last second. Okay. Because you came on this show years ago, and we talked about this search with this ground-penetrating radar, and then off the air you sent me the letter from the company where they say, hey, man, they won't let us search what we think we showed them where the bodies are. Then we just had you come back on. And it hasn't really aired widely yet, but it is up on Patreon. Some people have heard it. Now, I have had guests come on, and there must be out there, 50 books on Gacy? There must be, 10 movies on Gacy, documentaries, all this stuff, right? It's not like it's a secret case. This is a fascinating case. People are fascinated by this case. There's a lot of interest in this case. I've had guests come on here, okay, they tell their little story, and then a month later I see them, they're on Independent Discovery Channel. They're doing a whole thing about them, okay? I know there's documentary filmmakers that listen to my show and my guests, and they follow up on them. I've had guests come on, they tell me I got a whole gig on IDG because of being a guest on the show. This is blockbuster stuff, right? You met the guy, You saw him in person at this location, you got the study right here saying, hey, this is where the bodies are. No documentary film, no book, nobody's contacted Bill Dorsch and said, hey, man, we got a deal for you?
Well, no, that's not true.
Okay.
What happened, I've been contacted by people who wrote books, and I turned down them, and I also turned down the two latest documentaries. Okay.
Okay, why?
And I was offered money to be part of their show and this and that, and I turned it down. And the reason I turned it down, Ed, was they were rehashing the same often told story.
Yeah.
Nobody was going or willing to go into the information that no investigation was done. And I have that proof. Okay? And so I wouldn't connect with them on their offers. I turned them down. And, I decided I've been doing this for over 20 years, gathering information. I've got FOIA requests all over the place and responses. And some of these responses, Ed, they're in the appendix of my book. And they basically, appendices from the Sheriff's Department in particular, because they were responsible for that investigation. And I'm asking them for reports. I'm asking them for people's names, victims' names, possible victims' names, all this. And I'm being refused that stuff and everything else. But I made a pest of myself intentionally. And finally, I got what I wanted. I got the FOIA request from them that said, we did not do the investigation because we were not in control. We were only there to assist the city of Des Plaines. But, Ed, they took the case away from the city of Des Plaines about a day after Gacy was arrested. And Des Plaines only assigned one detective to assist the Sheriff's Department. The city of Chicago, where 33 of those victims mostly came from, they only...
With New Year's resolutions, many of us will make a vow to eat healthier, and that's a good thing. But what about our beloved pets and their nutrition? Greetings, Naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black here, and I'm on a mission to provide better nutrition for cats and dogs because, truthfully, all pet food is dead food, which is why we created Rough Greens and Meow Greens in the first place. We bring their food back to life with live vitamins, minerals, probiotics, enzymes, omega oils, antioxidants, and so much more. All in a tasty formula that your dog and cat will love. You can improve your pet's coat, digestion, energy, and have less vet bills. Let 2025 bring a new year and a new pet. Get a Jumpstart trial bag, normally $20. Get a 100% discount with promo code BESTFRIEND. You just cover the shipping. Go to roughgreens.com, use promo code BESTFRIEND. Bring your pet's food back to life with Rough Greens. So good, your pet will ask for it by name.
Assigned one detective to the Des Plaines Police Department. So they're telling me, no, we're not in charge. We're there to assist somebody. And so I'm saying, well, it looks to me like you're in charge. I want the reports that you have. And I get back a lot of declines. We can't find them. We can't find them. We can't find them. And then finally I get a FOIA that says, oh, yeah, we did talk to other departments trying to get their information, but it was all verbal. Verbal. Okay? And I'll tell you another thing. This I wrote about. After the first search in 98, and I left Chicago, between that time and 2011, I had sent 2 or 3 different FOIA requests to the city of Chicago, city of Chicago and to the Sheriff's Department, asking for their search, the report on the search that they did in 98. Actually, it was Chicago that did it. Okay? I wanted them to send me the report. Every time that I did so during that period of time, they wrote me back and said, we can't find that report.
Yeah.
Okay? And then a couple years later, in 2011, when I'm in Chicago now, and the story was again in the news, Larry Potash from WGN contacted me because he was very interested in the Gacy case, and I had given him a lot of information prior. And he said, Bill, I talked to the Sheriff's Department, and because now in 2011, it was the Sheriff's Department I was engaging with, not the Chicago Police. And he asked them, what's going on with the Miami Avenue location? And the Sheriff's office told him, nothing's being done because retired Detective Bill Dorsch will not cooperate with us.
Wow.
So he says so Larry Potash tells me, Bill, is that true? And I said, no. I said, this is what happened. I says, they called me one day, the investigator from the sheriff's office called me and said, we would like to talk to you. Would you come down to our office to have a meeting with us about this information that you have about Gacy? And I said, listen, this is 2011. In 1998, I can no longer trust you because of what happened in 98, where you took my information, but you faked the search. I says, if you want to talk to me now, I want a written request from, if you want to talk to me now, I'm going to bring an attorney with me to the meeting. And he said to me, well, let me get back to you tomorrow. So he called me the next day, and he said, listen, you don't need to come down here for the meeting. Just send me an affidavit of what you know about it. And I said, I will do so gladly, but I want you to send me an email or a letter requesting it. And he said, wait a minute, I'll get back to you again. He never contacted me after that. Okay? So I told Larry, and well, Larry asked me first. He said, so Bill, how can I help you? I said, well, this is what you got to do. I sent them a recent FOIA request asking again for that report to Chicago from the search in 98. I want you from WGN to send in the FOIA and tell them that if you don't get the report, that you're going to do a story about it on the news. And he said, okay, I'll do that. About 3 or 4 days later, I get a phone call from an officer of the Chicago Police Department telling me that we found the report. It was accidentally misfiled, and a clerk found it, and now we want you to have it, so we're sending it to you. I also contacted Larry. Larry said, yeah, I called him and told him like you said, and we have the report also. What nobody knew, what I never told Larry Potash, I had the report all along.
How'd you get it?
I had the report within 2 months of the search in 98. I got it from a sergeant friend of mine who was working in Area 5 at the time. But I didn't want to tell them because I want to see how they would handle my request. And so many of my requests were handled similarly. They can't find the report, mostly. So, I mean, that's that's how that goes.
I'd like to go back just for a second to how you said you were contacted by a couple of documentary filmmakers, because that's the other side of the coin, man. Where they offer you money, come in, but here, sign these NDAs. We own everything you've ever said, everything you own your work. We own everything, and and we can control. We can bury it now. We're going to bury it, and no one's going to see it.
But that wasn't. We never got into discussion that far.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it was the Clown and the Candyman was the last one. I mean, I had the executive from, I think it was ABC or CBS, I can't even remember, calling me, upping the offer every time they called.
Yeah.
But I didn't want the money. I wanted the story out there, and I wasn't going to fall into the trap of, once you engage with them, then they have total control.
Right.
The final product.
Right.
And I said, I want to tell what I know that's never been told before.
I have.
And there's no way to do it. Write the book.
I have guests who I'm dying to book on this show. They got great stories, historical figures, and I keep contacting them every year and a half, 6 months. Ed, I can't. I got a big project in the works that's right off on the horizon. I can't talk about anything, then they're gone. They die, because it gets buried over there. But you can find all this information in William Dorsch's book, Omnipotent, Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Also, he's a frequent guest on the, or like a co-host with Bob Motta on Defense Diaries on YouTube. And just between me and the audience, I can testify on behalf of William Dorsch when he says he's not interested in the money, because we talked off the air, okay, about his work with the Innocence Project. This guy's doing a lot of work for free, man. That I don't know a lot of guys that would be doing. So I can confirm off the air. He's told me this kind of stuff. He's not in this for the money. I can confirm that. Anything else you want to tell us about Gacy?
Well, let me tell you what's this about the search and the digs. Okay. So your listeners know, the Better Government Association and I took our information with IFPC, where my old boss, Jim Froome, who encouraged me to do the search. we took our radar information to the police, and that was in 1998. Then the police became involved, acting on our information. Like I said, the Better Government Association, they had to be compliant. They had to show that they were there, that they were willing to search, but they still controlled it, okay? And they did their first, as they say, they did their first dig inside a tent with no other witnesses except a few people. And all that information about that search is there in the book. And then years later, in March 20th of 2013, there was another dig, the second dig at the property. And that one was done with no announcement. It was done in secret. It was the Cook County Sheriff's Department and the FBI, Chicago Police Department, and the State's Attorney's Office. They were all there. And they brought 3 canine dogs from the FBI, and they did this secret search of the property, not telling anybody, okay, until sometime later. Anyway, I've got that report also. They gave it to me willingly.
Can you think of any innocent explanation why they would want to do a secret search and go to all the effort of bringing canine dogs?
Well, I'll tell you up front. I didn't go to the search in 1998 because I was already informed by friends of mine who were detectives in Area 5 that they were going to fake it, that they weren't going to find any bodies. So I said, I'm not going. I was avoiding the media.
Right.
I had been avoiding the media. I tried to keep the location quiet. I never gave the location out to the media. All right? So I didn't go. But also Jim Fruin and his associate, Rocky Rinaldi, who had been a sergeant, who encouraged me to do the search, were going on television saying they believed in the information of the radar scan. Suddenly, they don't go either. But they've been in meetings with the Chicago Police Department. They knew that they weren't going to find any bodies because they weren't going to search, really. So they didn't go, okay? So that was the other search that was done, reported search. What they didn't know, and nobody knew this until just recently, Bob Mata and I put this out on his Defense Diaries podcast. Last year in October, in 2022, I returned to Chicago, Ed, and met with Bob Mata, and we had retained our own ground-penetrating radar experts to search the property again.
Oh, this is a new search that you haven't told me about previously.
Right. Well, we haven't told anybody. Well, so I'm sure the government knows about it now.
Right.
I mean, we couldn't go to the Chicago Police Department or the State's Attorney's Office or the Sheriff's Department. They would prevent us because they don't want anybody.
Then let me ask you this. Now, you have the results of the first ground-penetrating radar search, that letter you sent me years ago, and now you have another report. Do you notice any anomalies or discrepancies between the two reports, like something was altered?
Well, no, what we did find, and this time after about 20 minutes into the search, we were interrupted by a person who said he managed the building or owned the property. But in comparison from the information we were able to obtain at that time, we were told by the examiner, in comparing it to the earlier, we were seeing the same anomalies in the same places.
Okay.
No, but we didn't get to do as much as we did previously. But Ron Labarca, who had done the first search from U.S. Radar in New Jersey, he said that he's found at least 17 anomalies on the property the day that he searched with the Chicago Police Department in 1998. And yet, he was only allowed to pick out 2 of the 17. And he was not even present when they said they searched. They put him in a car with his partner, and they drove him to the airport. So they gave him 2 locations, but were not there, and they don't know if they ever did actually do a dig inside that tent.
How powerful would you have to be to pull off a cover? Because that's the other portion of your book, is how these things are covered up. How powerful would you have to be in Chicago to pull this off?
Well, I'll tell you, when I went back, after Mrs. Moreno and what I said she went through, I said, if there's more hidden, I got to go back to where all this started. So I went and connected with Joe Kozenczak, who had been the lieutenant that formed the task force up within Des Plaines and surveilled Gacy and arrested him. What better source to go to, okay? And I had read the book that he had written. I had read the book that Terry Sullivan, one of the prosecutors, had written on the Gacy case. And I had a question for him, and it was, can you explain to me why you would change the names of two people who are widely known as living with Gacy and assisting Gacy in digging the holes and suspected by the Des Plaines Police Department of being accomplices? Why would you think that it was necessary to change the names in your book when they were so widely known? These two people, Michael Rossi and David Cram, lived with Gacy, worked with Gacy, even had sex with Gacy, okay? And they were not used at trial. I mean, they were not charged as accomplices. They were used as witnesses against Gacy. I said, so why did you do that? And he said, well, Bill, it's because of a couple of days before we did arrest Gacy, we had Michael Rossi in our office and we were grilling him, talking to him. He was not under arrest. But as a woman came in, making a lot of noise, and we went out to see what was going on, and she said she was a mother of Michael Rossi. And she told us, do you have my son here? We told her, yes, we do. We're talking to him now. She said, if you don't release my son right now, you won't have a job tomorrow. Okay? And like we said, I think maybe you and I talked about it. That's something I've heard in law enforcement too. Okay? But I said, well, that's a pretty heavy threat to make. I said, why would she say that? She says, well, she said further that my son is a grandson of Vito Marzullo. And if you were a Chicagoan at that time, you would know that Vito Marzullo was a Chicago alderman, recognized as probably the second most powerful politician in the city of Chicago. And if Michael Rossi was his grandson, he certainly had a lot of clout. Okay.
So you said this was told to you by Sullivan, the DA, or the Sullivan?
Well, this was Joe Kozenczak first.
Okay.
Told me that. So then because I knew that Terry Sullivan, the prosecutor, had written the book and also was there, I recognized that Terry Sullivan had changed the name of Michael Rossi and gave him a different name in his book, but he didn't change the name of Cram.
So Sullivan didn't say to you, hey, I changed the name because the publishers or because of liabilities, we didn't want to get sued. He says, oh no, Vito Marzullo would come after me.
Vito Marzullo.
Okay.
And their names were so widely known in the case. I mean, Rossi's driving a car of one of the victims. Okay? There's so much connecting him, and boy, have I got a lot more than just that. This never been told.
Well, tell us what? Tell us. What is it? What else you got, man?
Well, yeah. I mean, we don't have enough time.
We got 30 minutes, man. Come on.
Okay, it's a lot. And let me finish with the
go ahead.
So naturally, getting done with Kozenczak telling me about that, I go to Terry Sullivan next. And I tell Terry, and he doesn't meet with me in person. He meets with me on the phone. We talk on the phone. And I said, hey, I'm getting information that, you changed the name of Michael Rossi, but you didn't change the name of Cram. It's kind of suspicious. Why would you do that? He says, nothing really. I said, well, wait a minute, I'm getting information that Michael Rossi's connected to some politician, some important politician in the city of Chicago. And Terry Sullivan says to me, well, his mother might have worked for someone or knew someone, but it wasn't somebody of importance in the city. I said, well, who was that person? He says, I don't even remember, something like that. Mm. And I said, well, wait a minute. I'm going to tell you the truth now. I've already talked to Joe Kozenczak. I've met with him 3 times. Okay? And either Joe Kozenczak is a liar or he's made a mistake or you're the liar.
With New Year's resolutions, many of us will make a vow to eat healthier, and that's a good thing. But what about our beloved pets and their nutrition? Greetings, naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black here, and I'm on a mission to provide better nutrition for cats and dogs because truthfully, all pet food is dead food, which is why we created Rough Greens and Meow Greens in the first place. We bring their food back to life with live vitamins, minerals, probiotics, enzymes, omega oils, antioxidants, and so much more. All in a tasty formula that your dog and cat will love. You can improve your pet's coat, digestion, energy, and have less vet bills. Let 2025 bring a new year and a new pet. Get a Jumpstart trial bag, normally $20. Get a 100% discount with promo code BESTFRIEND. You just cover the shipping. Go to roughgreens.com, use promo code BESTFRIEND. Bring your pet's food back to life with Rough Greens. So good, your pet will ask for it by name.
Because this is what I know. That the mother came in, and he said, yeah, the mother came in. I remember the mother coming in, and she said she was connected or related to somebody in government, and but no, she never said and identified who it was. And I said, well, that's not what I hear from Kozak. I says, but then again, also coming in that same day was a guy named Hanrahan. He says, yeah, Hanrahan showed up after the mother. Hanrahan had been the state's attorney for Cook County just prior to that. Whoa. For about 6 years. He lost the election just before Gacy's arrest, but suddenly he appears at the police station with Mrs. Marino about her son. And then he works with her son all through the case where they say, well, we're not going to charge him. We're only going to use him as a witness.
Wait. So Hanrahan was a former prosecutor. He was working, though, as a defense attorney at the time when he came in?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's not too unusual.
Can't go any higher up the chain.
But that's not too unusual, though, for a former prosecutor to become a defense attorney and then show up when his client's under interrogation.
Yeah, but Mrs. Rossi was a simple tavern owner at the time, as far as we knew.
Gotcha.
And then not only that, later, when this is all happening before the dig, it's written. The Chicago Police Department got the building owner for the apartment on Miami Avenue.
Yeah.
They got him an attorney. They got him an attorney to protect him during the search.
Wait, who got him the attorney?
The Chicago Police Department.
The Chicago Police Department hired a private attorney for the landowner.
No, they didn't hire him. No, they don't say they hired him. They connected Robert Clifford, who is a highly connected attorney in Chicago, connected to the politicians, who suddenly now is going to represent the building owner. But he's put in contact with the building owner by the police department.
Well, just as a practical matter, why would the building owner need a specific attorney just to have, because there's a search on his property? What kind of liabilities are there for that? Nothing major. He's got insurance already. He's not going to be...
Well, they used him
yeah.
to come forward after the search to make threats against me and the Better Government Association.
Oh, really?
Saying they were going to sue us. He said that they were considering a lawsuit against Bill Dorsch, retired detective, and the BGA. But nobody said they were going to sue the Chicago Police Department. Just us.
I guess
and I said I went to the lawsuit because that would open up everything.
I guess the theory would be that Bill Dorsch diminished the value of the property because nobody wants to live there if there's dead bodies buried there.
Yeah, probably.
So let's get him a lawyer. Let's get him the biggest lawyer in town to take that case.
So that's why Michael Rossi and David Cram were not charged in any way. After that point, they were no longer, according to Kozak, going to be arrested. They were used as witnesses, and they even met. And I have all this in writing too. When Hanrahan met with the police department in preparation with Rossi for the trial to be used as a witness, he had the prosecution, state's attorney's office, agree that they would only ask him questions that they had already practiced at the trial.
Wait a minute. Because Rossi and Cram and these guys, they testified against Gacy?
Yeah.
Okay.
But see, they had to Cram didn't get charged either.
Right.
But Cram, like Rossi, lived with Gacy, worked with Gacy, brought kids back to work with Gacy, who later were disappeared and were found dead, drove his victims' cars. But Rossi, because of his clout, that was the reason why Cram didn't get charged either, because you could not let Rossi go and not Cram.
Right.
So you let both of them go. And then years later, Cram committed suicide, hung himself.
Where did he hang himself?
In Chicago.
At his home?
No, in the forest preserve near Milwaukee and Devon.
Where was it?
Not far from where I live.
Where?
Not far from where I live, not far from the home on Miami Avenue.
So Cram hung himself in his own home?
No, in the forest preserve.
In the forest preserve?
Yeah.
So he went out into the woods and hung himself?
Yes.
Okay. Did you talk?
And that was, I think, in 2012.
Did you?
Right after, again, we had renewed the investigation.
Did you talk to the investigators who responded to that crime scene and took those reports?
No.
Are you suspicious about that? The guy hung himself in the woods?
No, not really.
No?
Maybe he had a conscience. And plus, then now in 2011, I had renewed the investigation. It was big in the news again.
Right.
I mean, it was already in the Huffington Post had run a big article about it because a young man, boy, I want to give him credit, and I can't think of his name right now. He came to me. He was in college, and he wanted to know about the Gacy story, and he came to me because of my name being prevalent. And I met with him about 4 or 5 times for more than 20 hours and gave him all the information only leading up to the year 2011, okay? And that information, that article, that story that he wrote wound up as being the impetus that it went into the Huffington Post, and then suddenly everybody was interested in the Gacy case again.
What is the biggest misconception you want people to know about Gacy? And people think that they know about Gacy that they got wrong.
Oh, he was a monster. They're not wrong about that, but monsters aren't born. Murderers aren't born. People become murderers, all right? And Gacy, like a lot of people who were arrested and went to prison, sitting amongst their peers in penitentiary, what they realize is the reason they're sitting there in a penitentiary now is because they made one big mistake. They let their victim live. Okay? And when Gacy got out of jail, he right away was arrested twice for 2 other acts of trying to solicit young men. Okay? And he wound up in misdemeanor court with that. And the police departments and the state's attorney's office never checked his record. If they had, they would have found out that he was on parole for his sex assaults in Iowa. And if they had checked it, that would have violated him.
Yeah, what year was this? What year was this?
Well, he got out in 71.
Okay, I guess back in those days, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what about when you said you run into him at this Miami Avenue apartments? He's in 3 o'clock in the morning. He's there with a shovel. He knows you're a homicide detective, right?
No, at that time I was only on the job. That was 74. I was only on a job for 4 years.
So you knew you were a cop.
Patrolman.
Knew you were a cop.
Yes.
Was he shook up or was he cool as a cucumber?
Cool. Like I said, people ask me how was your time that you had the dinner at Gacy's house? I said, well, I spent 4 or 5 hours. Had a good time.
Yeah.
He was engaging. He had a lot of questions about police work. He knew about some of my police work from the newspapers, and he showed me the handcuffs. I told you about that, didn't I?
I don't know. I don't think he did. No.
Well, when I was there with my wife and my one son, Brian, who was not yet 4 years old. My wife was pregnant with my second son, who was not born until April of 74. And also there was John's second wife, Carol, and she had 2 young daughters. All right? So as my wife was talking to his wife and the kids were playing, John and I were playing pool. And suddenly he came back from the bar area with a pair of handcuffs. And he says, hey, let me show you a trick. And I said, John, I was in the academy not too long, 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago. Every day in training, I had handcuffs either put on me or I put them on somebody else. I know the trick, John. You have to have the key. So he said, oh, yeah, right, okay. Took him back, and he put the handcuffs away, and he came back out from behind the bar with a handgun. And he goes, here, look at this. And he went to hand me the gun. And like I said, guns are part of my profession. They're a tool of my trade. I'm familiar with guns. I know how to handle a gun, but I don't like handling guns in the presence when it's no need to handle the gun, especially when little children are around. So I told John, it looks like a good gun, John. Not interested. So he took the gun and put it away. But when I was there that night, I didn't feel threatened at all by him. He asked me to come back to his house. He said, if you're in the neighborhood and you want to have a few beers, stop by, we'll have a beer. You know?
But that little stunt with the handcuffs, that's what he would do to his victims, right? You think he was trying to do it to you and your wife and the kid?
Well, see, I don't think because my wife was there, his wife was there, the kid was there, there was any threat to me. But I think in his mind, because he knew I was a policeman, he might have taken that as a personal victory. Yeah. You know, look, I got this copper to put on the handcuffs. My God. If I can get him to put it on, I can get anybody to put them on, right? And so I think that was the only reason for him doing it. You know, and I never went back, and then he invited me back a second time not too long after that, he had come to my apartment to do some minor repair work in our bathroom, and he brought with him a young boy, about 17, 18 years old. And after leaving the boy with us to do the work, he returned to pick up the boy, and as he was leaving again, he again said, hey, if you're interested, stop by the house, we'll have a few beers.
Wow.
And like I told you, you know, I had a good time in his building, the visit there.
With New Year's resolutions, many of us will make a vow to eat healthier, and that's a good thing. But what about our beloved pets and their nutrition? Greetings, naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black here, and I'm on a mission to provide better nutrition for cats and dogs because truthfully, all pet food is dead food, which is why we created Rough Greens and Meow Greens in the first place. We bring their food back to life with live vitamins, minerals, probiotics, enzymes, omega oils, antioxidants, and so much more. All in a tasty formula that your dog and cat will love. You can improve your pet's coat, digestion, energy, and have less vet bills. Let 2025 bring a new year and a new pet. Get a Jumpstart trial bag, normally $20. Get a 100% discount with promo code BESTFRIEND. You just cover the shipping. Go to roughgreens.com, use promo code BESTFRIEND. Bring your pet's food back to life with Rough Greens. So good, your pet will ask for it by name.
But I did not bond with him as a friend. I was busy with my life, with my kids, and with my job, you know. And he was living less than 10 minutes away from me. I mean, it would have been an easy ride back to his house, but I never did go there, thankfully.
Now, you met his wife, and you were there at dinner with his wife. Do you think that she had any suspicions about what this guy was up to?
You know, I've been in a lot of homicide cases, and it's very hard to know that, of what other family members would know. I mean, if she would have, I don't think she's ever said that she knew what he was doing, but I know it's reported that she was suspicious because he had told her to stay out of the shed that was in the back. And one time she did go in there only to find mattresses and mirrors and women's clothing and things like that in there. But she didn't tell him she was in there. But he had told her specifically, don't go in that shed. And that was the shed where he would come late at night and take a young boy in the shed and then leave and then return home later. So I said there's three parts to John Gacy, though. The first part, when he got out of prison and he moved into the building on Summerdale, from 71 when he moved in until 1976 when he divorced Carol, I don't think he was, he says his first victim was in December 71 or 72. I don't think he remained dormant for that time, for 4 years. But he had a hard time. He would have had a hard time committing murders in the house and burying the bodies there because Carol was there with the kids, and even Gacy's mother was living there for a while, and so was Carol's mother living there for a while. So the only opportunity he could have had would have been when everybody was out of the house. But that's why the Miami Avenue location was important.
Right.
Because it was less than 10 minutes away. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'll tell you, having lived in that neighborhood, I grew up 4 blocks away from the Miami Avenue house. At 3 o'clock in the morning, you could have put a chair out in the middle of Elston or Milwaukee Avenue and not worry about getting hit by a car because they were so infrequent at that time of the night. You know, so for him, and don't forget, his holes were always pre-dug.
Right.
You know, I've got witnesses, and I don't know if I ever talked to you about the witnesses that I had, and I didn't gather my witnesses up until after 98 because I thought I gave them the names of people. I said, go talk to this guy, go talk to this person, go talk to her, thinking that the police would do that. I wanted them to get the information. I didn't want it to come from me. I was just a mess.
You there? Yeah, sorry. It did the same thing as last time. It made me pay $10. I guess these shows that cost me $10 in fees. But we got about 5 minutes left. We're talking to William Dorsch. We had a little technical difficulty there. The book is called Omnipotent, Don't Ask, Don't Tell. William Dorsch. You're not going to hear this unless you go to this other podcast. It's Bob Matta, Defense Diaries on YouTube. Because I haven't heard stuff like this on Gacy my whole life. So we're hearing it really top exclusive stuff. In 5 minutes, what do you want to leave us with?
Well, I could tell you that there's witnesses who were had knowledge of the works that Gacy did at the Miami Avenue location, and their names became known because I gave them to the Chicago Police Department, and they never went out to interview them, so I went out and interviewed them myself. And also, I had another few people come out and do actual recordings of the information. Now,
those witness statements you took, are they in the book?
Yes.
Oh, Omnipotent. Check out the book. Omnipotent, Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I got to get a copy of this myself, man. So you have other witnesses. And what did these witnesses have to say?
Well, I was trying to say that John Ignapo, when he was a youth, would go there to play with other boys that lived there. And they would play on the front yard because that grass, it was not very large, but it was the biggest front lawn in the neighborhood. And they would play football on the front lawn. And he tells a story that they would go over there, and they also played war games as children over there. And he says that they played war games, and they would jump in these open trenches and pretend to shoot at each other. And I asked him, how big were these holes that you were jumping into? And he said, well, they were big enough for 2 or 3 of us little kids to get into. And then he says, I didn't know until years later that when I went to funerals, that what I was actually looking at in the front yard were holes that were not dug for planting, but like graves.
Yeah, what other reason would he be having to dig these big giant holes?
And leave them open. I mean, if you're going to do landscaping, and that wasn't what John Gacy usually did. He did construction work and remodeling work. He was not known as a landscaper. But he hired a boy named Michael Nelson across the street from the Miami apartments. And Michael Nelson worked for Gacy. Gacy paid him for cutting the grass and shoveling the snow and taking the garbage out. And in the book, you'll see Michael Nelson talks about the holes, too. He says the holes were pre-dug, and he remembers it vividly because when he'd be cutting the grass, he'd have to go around the holes with a lawnmower. And every day when he went to school, he cut across the front lawn, and the holes were there, and they were open for days. He talks about the yard, the parking area in the back of the building. It wasn't big, only room for 3 or 4 cars. He says, but Gacy stopped him one day when he was bringing the trash out and told him, you got to go around the other way because we're getting ready to pave the parking area. And then he took the garbage and he noticed there's a young Hispanic kid in a hole that's about up to his chest.
Wow.
Okay? And he said, I didn't think of it at the time, but after Gacy got arrested, he said, boy, I'm thinking now I'm a little older, but I realized, why would you want to dig so deep to prepare the surface for the blacktop? Okay?
Real quick.
And so that's one of the places we're really interested in.
Real quick. How many people lived in those apartments? How large were these apartments?
There were 5 apartments.
Okay.
2 on the first floor, 2 on the second, a garden apartment, with the attached laundry area.
Okay, so that's easy enough to, and 5 people aren't going to get all
And
that.
I'll tell you, we haven't scratched this.
Yeah.
I have so much more, but I'm going to tell you, Tuesday, October 24th, is the 47th anniversary of the disappearance of Michael Marino. So that was 47 years ago.
Gotcha.
And as we know, that was a young boy who, it turns out, that he was misidentified. He's not the person that was identified in the grave as being Michael.
Gotcha. Okay. We've been talking to William Dorsch. The book is called Omnipotent, Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And you can hear more about this on this YouTube podcast, Defense Diaries, with Bob Mata and William Dorsch. William, we got to have you come back and tell us about the rest of the book, which is all about police corruption and your work with the Innocence Project and all these things. We you're going to wind up moving in with me, bro. Okay. But thank you again, my friend.
Okay, Ed.
Good night.
Take care, buddy.
You too.
Bye.
With New Year's resolutions, many of us will make a vow to eat healthier, and that's a good thing. But what about our beloved pets and their nutrition? Greetings, Naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black here, and I'm on a mission to provide better nutrition for cats and dogs because truthfully, all pet food is dead food, which is why we created Rough Greens and Meow Greens in the first place. We bring their food back to life with live vitamins, minerals, probiotics, enzymes, omega oils, antioxidants, and so much more. All in a tasty formula that your dog and cat will love. You can improve your pet's coat, digestion, energy, and have less vet bills. Let 2025 bring a new year and a new pet. Get a Jumpstart trial bag, normally $20. Get a 100% discount with promo code BESTFRIEND. You just cover the shipping. Go to roughgreens.com, use promo code BESTFRIEND. Bring your pet's food back to life with Rough Greens. So good, your pet will ask for it by name.